Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. It must be Tuesday, it must be 9 a.m. Pacific, and I have the good fortune of having Andy with me here today.
Hey everyone,
Andy, what do you think of my new green screen?
I love it. Yeah, I wish I had that weather.
For those of you that don't know, I am here at South by Southwest, which is in Austin, Texas. I'm giving a talk tomorrow called The Future of People, which focuses on the future of ambient computing and technology and stuff like that. And so that is why I'm not in my normal studio, but I'm glad to be here and glad to be chatting with all of you. As we do every week, we're here to answer all of your questions. So if you have any questions about Alexa or development or devices or whatever, we're happy to take those for you today. Andy, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. I was getting some weird signals about my Wi-Fi maybe being a little flaky. So we'll see how this goes today. Well, we've got a bunch of folks here. It looks like we've got people from Germany. I think there was someone else. No, it was only somebody just mentioned they were from Germany, but there's a bunch of people here already. So welcome to all of you joining us here on this honestly absolutely beautiful Tuesday here in Austin, Texas. It is, Andy, it's about 70 degrees maybe right now.
Nice.
Very, very sunny, as you can see behind me. I'm not standing in the sun, but if I back up to here,
Oh, I see.
get a nice sun on you. It's actually a
Yeah,
little warm in the sun,
nice.
but I do need like a ring light or something here. I feel like normally I have so much light on me in my home office that it feels like I'm standing in the dark. Well, no questions yet. So let me ask you this, Andy. What are you working on these days? Anything cool?
What am I working on? Yeah, I mean, part of my focus is smart home skills, and one of the things I'm trying to do is go through all the different smart home APIs and to create like a basic skill of each one of them. And so I started a week or so ago with a thermostat controller. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
And trying to get that up and running. And I'm not sure what I should focus on today. Maybe the smart lock. I'd love it if people could post in comments what they think I should work on next. I'd love to
Yeah.
see what people think.
In the smart home skill domain, correct?
In the smart home skill domain, yeah, exactly. But I'm doing it for my own learning, just to see how it goes, and also it doesn't hurt, if somebody has a question about a particular API, if I have the code ready to go and a skill that's kind of ready, it's easy for kind of troubleshooting, playing around with it. So yeah, but my goal this year is kind of go through and get one at a time for each one. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. Yeah, I've picked off a few features on the custom skill side that I really wanted to deep dive more on. I've spent a decent amount of time building things for APL, but it was mainly for the visuals, right? Understanding how things go on the screen of an Echo Show device. But I hadn't really spent a ton of time with APLA, which is the audio composition tool.
mm,
And
okay,
so I've mentioned this before, and I'm not ready to show anybody just yet, but it's coming along. Um, Last year, I spent a good amount of time on stream building a Alexa casino, and so it covered things like craps and video poker and blackjack and roulette, and it was fun to work on that stuff. None of them were ever finished like to a production level, ready to go, but you could play the basic games, and it could keep track of your tokens and all that kind of stuff.
that's cool.
But what I've decided to do is use it as a mechanism to learn a bunch of other features. And so the first one that I decided to learn was Alexa skill connections. This is where you can be in one skill and use that skill to connect directly to another one. And so what I'm doing is basically breaking the casino up into individual skills. So you'll have a slots one, you'll have a poker one, you'll have a whatever, because what I think is in my benefit is that when we think about name-free invocation and the way that people can just say whatever they want and it can lead to your skill, I think I'm better off having individual skills. So the people that want to play slots, when they say things about slots, they'll find my skill. Where if I just have like one big behemoth skill that is a casino,
Yeah,
that's a little less specific and a little harder maybe for people to find. So long story, but basically I'm working on slots right now, and I'm
yeah,
playing with APLA in a way that I haven't before. And I think I've come up with kind of a clever solution for doing this slot stuff. So I actually found a audio designer in Ukraine, not because of all the conflict and things that are going on over there, but just he just happened to be in Ukraine when I found him on a vendor's website, and he made a bunch of sound effects for me for the slot machine.
cool.
And so I now have this APLA document that I can plug in with data sources, because one of the things I really wanted to do was not have it sound the same every time, right? This is an auditory experience, and I didn't want, like, you say spin the slot machine or bet 5 coins on the slot machine or whatever, and then it's just always like chunk, 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 like the three wheels kind of stop always in the same interval, the same way. So I figured out with APL how to basically have like a background spinning noise while also playing the three chunk noises, but introducing silence in between them of randomized lengths. So it'll play some randomized silence, then it'll play the chunk noise, then it'll play another randomized silence, then another chunk noise, and then I also can tack onto the end a like winning noise if you actually won something. Then on top of that, the chunk noises, I have 15 different tones. If you think about like notes on a piano. And so I can use those different notes for the different shapes and symbols that you would see on a slot machine, which means as you listen to it without any visual input at all, you can quickly hear whether or not your symbols matched, because you'll hear the same notes or not. And so I'm inserting those in addition to the randomized amount of space. So it always sounds like a slot machine where the reels stop at different times in different ways. It's been kind of a fun experiment.
So you're trying to, that sounds awesome. So you're trying to replicate kind of like the mechanical experience, right? Where it's not, maybe not exact in terms of the sounds and the timing and everything.
Yeah, but it's a little more realistic
awesome.
when it just feels a little randomized, and it's not. Again, I'm a big proponent of not being predictable in an audio experience, right? It draws your attention in when you don't know what's coming, even if it's just randomized amounts of time between reels stopping.
So this is just only an audio skill, like you don't have a visual component yet? Because I was curious.
It will excuse me, it'll very much have a visual experience as well. But being somebody that has been around Alexa for so long, there was a time where we didn't have screens, and so it's kind of been ingrained in me that, like, that's fine, you can offer a visual experience, but you need to provide a really rich audio only experience, because there's a ton of Echo Dots out there, and I would hate for them to not have a very good experience compared to those that do have screens.
I was just thinking about timing the visuals with the audios, right? So if you're having like gaps in between the different sounds, as the numbers come up or the symbols come up, right, you're going to want to time that, right, so that the visual is timed along with the audio, which would be a fun problem.
It is going to be a fun problem for sure. My thought is that I think I can create an APLA and an APL document, and so I should be able to use the same timings, those randomized times that I've separated. I should be able to use those in both documents. And it'd be very interesting to see how it works. Oh, we have a couple of comments here. Alan first said, draw your attention to what you don't know is coming is something that there are very few examples about in the simple example. So very glad to hear that. Well, I agree with you, Alan. I think that keeping people on their toes, so I give a talk, I've given it dozens of times, called 10 Things Every Voice App Should Do. And this is one of my key points, is randomize all the things. You should randomize the speech that is used. So you should have 8 or 10 variations on everything that someone said, that the skill can say. You should vary the order that those things can be presented. As much as you can mix it up, it's much more like a conversation. I mean, Andy, you and I have said hello to each other dozens of times in the 6 months that you and I have known each other, or I guess 9 months now. And in that time, it's never really the same, right? There's a different cadence, different words, different whatever. And if we're trying to emulate conversations, it needs to look and act more like that.
Yeah, you don't want to train people to say the same things all the time or expect the same things.
Right.
Within reason, right? It needs to be somewhat, within the realm of what's expected, but like also with some surprises thrown in terms of not being very stale.
Yeah.
In terms of the experience.
Yeah, Brian Tarbach said he did something similar with background crowd sounds in his Premier League skill. He has a skill that does a bunch of cool stuff with the English Premier League. And he said he bought a bunch of different crowd sounds. He selects one randomly and then selects a random start point. So it always sounds different. It's not the same predictable audio that you hear every single time.
Yeah.
I think it's the right way to go. Cool. It's more work for sure, but it's a cool solution.
Nice. I like it.
We're light on questions today.
People just want to see you at South by Southwest.
Right. They just want to take in some South by.
Get some rays. Yeah.
I was very tempted to jump on here, and I could just like set up my phone and stream
Yeah.
my presentation from a table or something. It's tomorrow at 11:30 Central,
Mm.
which is 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. I might still do that. We'll see. I haven't decided. I mean, I need my laptop to give my presentation and all that, so it won't be from here. But I can
Yeah.
use this same broadcast tool on my phone. So maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's rules against that. We'll find out.
It's a good way to find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Brian posted another comment here. One can also make small changes to well, it's going fast. Prosody, there we go. To be just a little different, perhaps not even noticeable.
Yeah. Agreed. So what he's talking about with prosody, there's a couple of things you can do there, but prosody is often the speed of the speech. You have controls in SSML around how fast the AI will talk, and so you can, just by making small tweaks to that, you can make it feel and sound different.
Very cool.
And so Alan says, I don't think there needs to be a lot more work. There are libraries that will do it now. The extra work is mostly just coming up with the phrases. Yeah, and that's more or less what I mean. I mean, if you're going to randomize speech, that's a pretty hard thing to just outsource. So, the work for me is coming up with all the different phrases. And as I build out my skill, I'll have this database of all of the different speech types so that I can just classify them all in one table and tag them with categories. Yeah. Miguel Costa has a question here.
First question. Yeah. I love it.
Miguel Costa on LinkedIn says, numeric values issue on Alexa console. I'm having some issues with understanding how Alexa processes numbers. If the user says this, 198, Alexa console converts to 188 something. If I have an entity with a value of 198 is not matched, if I add the synonyms 188, it is not matched. If I add one slot in the search query, it gets 198 for some reason. Alexa converts numbers to America Tabernacle, and then I lose the rest of your comment, Miguel. I think we're limited on the number of characters we can see, but let me address this for you. You're working in the Alexa console, which means you're typing things in, and then the console is trying to interpret the words that you used. One of the things that I've run into frequently is when a great example is the slot machine, right? I want someone to be able to say, bet 5 coins as a trigger to like start the slot machine. When I use the console, I frequently type bet, then a space, then the number 5, then a space, then coins or credits or whatever. Realistically, and this is a shortcoming of the console and probably something that could be addressed, it does not take numerical input very well. What I found is that I get far more consistent results and far better outcomes if I type in bet space the word 5, F-I-V-E, space coins. That seems to work every single time. But if you're typing actual digits, actual numbers, which is what you're describing to me in your comment, I have found very inconsistent results when I provide a number like 198. So that is definitely something to consider and test and see if by typing out the phrases, the 198 or 188, you don't need punctuation. I know in your comment you use dashes between like 88 or 98. But you should be able to say 188 or 188, and it should be able to recognize those numbers and really pass them through the way that you would expect. But numbers do not work the way that I'd hoped. And the reason is because you're typing to what is essentially a voice interface. And so I don't know why this seems to be an issue, but typing numbers into the console is something that has plagued me for years. So I'm sorry that it isn't solved. It seems like that would be an easy thing to just fix, but I'm sure there are a number of technical hurdles in the way of making that happen easily. And then I saw somebody just post something else here that I haven't seen before. And so I need to go to the test console and see if what you're describing is actually true. Brian Tarbach says, well, we'll talk about emotion tags in just a second, but he said he really likes the new console feature of saved utterances. That is a brand new feature that no one told me about. I had no idea. You can save up to 30 utterances for faster testing. Enter your utterance in Alexa Simulator and click plus to save. So I'm going to say open casino slots.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
And that's fine. I'm not actually running my back end right now. And I know you guys can't see this. Interesting. So, oh man, I need to talk to somebody. Okay. Cool. I'm glad it's there, Brian. I'm glad that you really like it. But I think a lot of us up until today have been using a browser plugin from a company called Jovo. And the Jovo plugin already provided the ability to replay an utterance that you typed into the simulator, as well as add it to a set of keywords. And it looks like whatever UI we just added kind of like lays right on top of that and is really gross. Gross looking in how it works. So I'm not sure how. I got to make sure I tell somebody about that. They may not even be aware that that other one exists. I mean, I'm glad we've added something to the console though. That's awesome.
I think we skipped over a question earlier from Vladimir.
The one about
yeah.
tags?
No. I am new to Alexa skill development. I'd like to hear your whole development process summarized. Tools, programs.
Well, Vladimir, on YouTube, the whole development process. That's a long story. I think the best bet, if you're new to Alexa skill development, is to check out. We have an excellent workshop that kind of walks you through all the bits and pieces of building a skill. I think I have that here. I can add it to the screen. Alexa.design/caketime. That will take you to our workshop, and it walks you step by step through everything you need to know about getting started with a skill, how things like intents and utterances and slots work, and all that kind of stuff. That's a good place to start. But I think you're also asking about like development process. This is something that I plan on revisiting very soon, but I used to do a live stream coding event like a couple days a week where I'd get on in the morning and I would just sit and I'm working on my skill, like this slot machine that I'm working on. And I'm doing all of my development the way I normally would, right? I have local debugging installed. I'm working in VS Code. I have a database where I'm adding and manipulating records. And I plan on bringing this back very soon to like an actual live broadcast that I'm doing a few days a week. But I haven't pulled the trigger on it just yet because life is crazy right now. But as soon as I can do it on a consistent cadence, I absolutely plan to do that. And then that'll give you a better indication of like how I do it. If you're talking about my development process, if you're looking for just a good summary of how to best approach setting up your project structure and managing all of that kind of stuff, I might also take a look at the, I'm assuming you use something like VS Code. I can't recommend VS Code enough for like a local development environment for Alexa skills. And in there, we do offer something called the Ask Toolkit, ASK, Alexa Skills Kit Toolkit for VS Code, which is a plugin that you can add to VS Code. And it gives you a lot of those capabilities and understandings. And there's really good technical documentation about it as well. So I might also recommend that you look into that in the meantime until I can get back to doing some live development and answering questions and all that stuff. All right. So
some more questions.
Yeah, that's good. They're all rolling in here. I want to make sure I catch Brian's question about emotion tags. He knows I can't answer roadmap questions, but he wishes that the emotion tags that are available in SSML were available everywhere. More emotions would be great. Completely agree, Brian. I will add that to the list. I will also mention, I haven't talked to you guys about this in a little while because I wasn't sure where the ownership landed with this, but we have an awesome place to put this kind of thing. Let me see if I can bring up I'll turn CakeTime off for a second and bring this one up. Alexa.design/user voice. I don't know if everybody is aware that a user voice exists, but we have a user voice website, and the entire purpose of this is for all of you, when you have feature requests, when you have future looking stuff, when you have something that you really want people to be able to give you as a tool or a technology or an API or whatever it is, put that stuff there. Our product team is reviewing this on a regular cadence and looking at what your feedback is. You can go in there and you can vote features up and say, hey, I really need this or I really want that. So you may not even have to enter them yourself. They may already be on the list. But going to that website on occasion, once a month and just voting some stuff up and adding some things that you've run into, I think will do you a good amount of value because the product team is using that as an input to their roadmap. And so while I can't make any promises that they will take your feature and be like, yeah, we're going to do this today. It is something that will be on their visible roadmap. And hopefully that's something that they can make happen for you at some point. Okay, so that's emotion tags. Robert Kolak wants to know if Alexa can identify musical keys. So if I sang the first few notes of a known song, I actually believe that I think the capability is there. Like, the idea of being able to take audio, map it against a set of notes, and then provide some kind of information about what the frequency or however we boil that down. I think that is possible. It's not that capability is not available today in Alexa at all. But I think like that at its core, the technology is there. It's something that could be done. So Robert, that's another one that I might recommend throwing over to user voice is, hey, I would like people to be able to play a note. I mean, you can see all sorts of things for this. Where like a guitar tuner would be a great example, right? Like use Alexa to tune your guitar. And there are guitar tuners, but what they do instead is they rely on your ears. So it just plays a tone and then you tune your guitar until it's making the same tone, but you're using your ears to decide what if they actually match. What you're describing is I want to play a note and it can tell me if it's a C sharp or an F sharp or whatever note it is, but it might also even be able to tell me with enough specificity, like am I sharp, am I flat on that note, how does that stuff work? Might be pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the idea.
It's a very cool idea, but it's not something that's possible today.
Yeah.
Death Power on Twitch says he's talking about the saved utterances. He says it's definitely a great feature. I installed a browser extension for that the other day. Today, I uninstalled the browser extension as to better use the native version. And Tapster follows up with the plugin is better for sure. Well, ours is, I guess, just a V1. Like I literally didn't even know we were doing that, so I'm going to have to find out where that all came from. And Brian Tarbox wants to know what the link for the plugin is. Let me see if I can find that here. I have to. It's kind of hidden, as I recall. It's not in their docs, I don't think. Somewhere in here. Here we go. Plugins. Is that even what I wanted? I don't think that's what I wanted. I'm digging here and I'm not finding. Let me see if I can find Jovo Tech Chrome plugin Alexa. Is this it? Sorry, I know like you guys can't even see what I'm doing. I'm just digging right now, but yeah, I think this is it. This is at least the GitHub repository, but I think you can just pull this down and unzip it. So let me get over to chat and I'll add a link to this. So again, the Jovo one is cool and I've definitely used it, but I'll be interested to see how similar the new developer console one is. Vladimir says, where the developer console is better than local debugging. The developer console is very convenient, but I would not say it is better than local debugging in any way. I can run the code that I'm writing, the Lambda code or whatever backend code. I can run that locally on my machine and use that as the actual endpoint, which allows me to do breakpoints and stoppages and all sorts of other stuff. So local debugging is far superior from a time perspective. I think that there are some tools in the developer console that are superior, like the ability to create an interaction model by just clicking and moving some things around. I think that the APL tools are pretty solid, and writing APL locally is limited to you typing JSON. So there are tools that are certainly very good, but yeah, it's not something that you can. I can't think of a situation where I would rather use the console than local debugging. All right. Don mentioned that VoiceFlow has a great development environment as well, if especially for novice developers. So that's good to know. James Hall on YouTube says, I would like to see the same thing. There really is not an easy way to get started. It sounds to me like between Ryan and I, we need to put a video together on like getting started building your first skill, ideally with local debugging, just to give everybody like a roadmap to get them from A to B.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that plugin you mentioned. So
yeah, it's a good one. And I mean, all it really gives you is it uses the skill ID, so it actually remembers the things that you saved by skill.
Mhm.
And I think it saves it all locally. I don't think it's a cloud-based anything, but it puts a plus sign and a replay sign next to each utterance that you type into the developer testing tool, and the console there. So if you want to save something, you just hit the plus sign, and it adds it to a menu, like kind of between the text box and where you see all the sample utterances. And then it also has a replay button, so you can just be like, yeah, say this again. Because as you're testing, like you need to run it a few times in a row, and the default tool, you'd have to retype it every single time. Which again, I mean, we're talking incredibly minor problems in the grand scheme of the world, but not retyping utterances over and over and over again is definitely valuable.
It's a time saver, yeah, for sure.
Okay, we're back to Miguel Costa, who was the one talking about converting numbers. He's using the term American Tabernacle. Is that a term you're familiar with related to numbers? I feel like I need to do a quick amount of research here.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that word in that context. I know the word tabernacle, but I don't know it in that context. I apologize, Miguel.
It sounds like there's some sort of, like he's mentioning the locale there, for the language, ENCA.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's some particular language scheme or something like that he's expecting that it's not translating it the right way.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know more about that, actually.
Yeah, I'm. That's definitely something I'm gonna have to look into after we're done here. And I just, if there's a link that can give me some background on what you're referring to, because I do still suspect that the problem you're having with the dev console is the fact that typing numbers in like actual digits is problematic for the simulator, but typing the words for those numbers seems to work marvelously. At least that's been my experience with building skills. So I don't know if that solves your problem, but I'm hoping that it does. All right, so Habuma says he loves the Jovo plugin, has been using it for a couple of years. It's wonderful. I agree. I've had it on my machines for multiple years. It's excellent. Sebastian Laguna on YouTube says, can Alexa be integrated to return data from a database in a mobile app? There's a lot to unpack in that question. I mean, this starts to lead me down paths of AVS implementations.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
What are your let's say we go that direction first. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I know there's a way to integrate AVS into an app, right? And you'd use the microphone of the device for input and the speakers, I think, for the output. So I think I haven't looked into it. I haven't tried it out myself, but I would definitely start there. To return data from a database in a mobile app, like you would have to probably write your own custom skill to return that data. But this is where it says from a database in a mobile app. And so I don't know what that means, if the database is tied to the mobile app, on the device, or if it's somewhere, that's just where you want that data to be shown. Or if
there's just so many variables here.
Yeah, the architecture of this, I'm not quite certain of. So maybe he's talking about there's data in the mobile app and he wants Alexa to return data from that app. But if that's the case, I would assume that data is available in the cloud somewhere, right? So the app
I
is
don't know
pulling from that database.
I don't know that that's a complete assumption. I think that there are lots, especially on like early day apps,
Yeah.
where people are just using local storage on the user's device, and there isn't a cloud service behind it at all.
Yeah.
I don't know how common that is anymore, but I know that used to be incredibly frequent. Like if you uninstalled the app, you lost everything.
Yeah.
I think people are being more and more responsible with their customers' data and thinking about how to best use it. But yeah, if the data is in local storage, I don't know how you would get to that.
Also, is it your app or not, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's not your app, it's probably unlikely you're going to be pulling the data from that app, right?
Yeah.
Due to security concerns. So I'd like to know more about what Sebastian's trying to do there. Maybe you can answer the question a little bit better.
It's definitely an interesting scenario. I think that there's a lot of big questions that could come out of that. But I think at its core, if I was starting from scratch and I was building a mobile app and I wanted to have an AVS software device basically living inside my mobile app, I could talk to it that way, and then I could talk to the app and have it retrieve data and take on any of the kind of interactions that I would have inside the app. So yeah, from that perspective, I think it's possible, but I don't know that that's exactly what Sebastian's asking. So we'll wait and see as we get some clarification here.
Cool.
Alarna wants to know if there are local debugging docs and local debugging with a local DynamoDB. Alarna, I'm not aware of local debugging with a local Dynamo. I do believe that there is a AWS implementation of local Dynamo, but I haven't played with it. The catch with all local debugging is that there always is a cloud element, because you are testing from a device or you're testing from the developer console. And so in all of those cases, you're still testing on something that isn't your computer, and then you are making a cloud call. So even if you use the dev console, the testing tool, you're still making a cloud call out that then hits your endpoint, which might be local debugging. And so because of that, as a result, I haven't really considered a local version of my database, because all of my databases are cloud-based. And so I just allow my local machine to make the calls to the cloud database rather than otherwise. I don't know if what you're heading towards is like, I want to be able to debug on an airplane with no Wi-Fi connection at all. And I don't believe that that's possible today. I mean, even if you use the CLI invocation commands, it's still a cloud call. It's not talking to you locally. It still has to go to Alexa and come back, because that's where like all the JSON and everything else gets created. Are there local debugging docs? I thought there was.
Did we skip some? I think did we talk about emotional state?
Oh, we didn't. I didn't have a good answer for that, and then I didn't go back to it.
Okay.
So if you think about the AWS services of Lex and Poly and that kind of stuff, if you were to build a voice bot using those tools, there is sentiment analysis, there is emotional range detection. I forget what that actual term is, but they sound sad or they sound happy. Those things exist there. They do not. That we do not provide that information yet as any part of the Alexa payload. So this is again one of those things that like user voice would be a really good place to make those kinds of requests, because I think ultimately that's where you'll end up if you really want that stuff. It's going to have to go through those routes. Thank you for keeping me honest, though. Sometimes I just scroll looking for questions.
Nice.
So let's see.
So we had local debugging docs, and now we're down to. All right.
That's not actually what I wanted anyway. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to drop this link. This is the local debugging docs for using the VS Code testing simulator and Ask Toolkit for VS Code. So hopefully that will help some people. Were you about to say something, Andy?
Oh, are you answering Vladimir's question about tutorials about local development?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, yeah, the local development docs is what I just provided. That was what Alarna was asking about.
Okay, it sounds like we had a couple of questions on the same thing. It sounds like we need more tutorials about, how to develop locally.
Okay. I hadn't gotten that far yet. If a mobile app is something like Airtable, then yes. What is Don referring to? Must have been
maybe that's the
cloud-based databases.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is.
Andy, have you had any issues seeing the stream at all?
The stream? No.
Joel Work says he's having trouble losing the stream occasionally. Okay, good to know. He's on Twitch, but I haven't seen any technical issues. Usually, if one of us is having an issue, we'll see it, and if the broadcast goes down, we would know that too. So
yeah.
Okay, so we're back to Miguel and his numbers situation. If I write on the console the words 188 something, the text is converted to 188 something and still no hit on the entity or the slot. Is there any place I can read about the number issue? No, I don't believe that is very well documented, unfortunately. But I think that I need to understand better what your interaction model looks like and what you're trying to capture. Because if you say 188, you should be able to have a slot that's like Amazon.number, and that should take the 188, convert it to a number, and give you the actual digits as something that you can use as a slot value. But I don't remember seeing like an interaction model representation of what you're saying, so I don't fully know what you're trying to accomplish here. So you're saying if the user says 198 something, you're saying it's, and you keep teetering between 198 and 188. So I think you're also trying to indicate that it's like just not even hearing the correct number. But I guess I would need to understand what your interaction model looks like. Miguel, this might be something for us to take to Slack too. If you have an interaction model you want me to look at or help me understand what it is you're actually trying to accomplish, I would be happy to do that. But I'm struggling to understand the context of this one, and I would love to help you. Okay. Let's see. Dana says the extension doesn't seem to be working. Was that the start of that thread? But the extension worked for me. I mean, I just opened the dev console, which is the first time I've opened it today. That's the first time that I saw it. This is the new built-in one that's in the dev console. The plugin is something that you need to add via the Google Chrome. I'm assuming it's only built for Google Chrome, I think. But you have to add it from the Google Chrome plugins store or whatever. And I provided the GitHub that has like their actual code and you can compile and do all that stuff. But I think it has a link to the Google reference as well in there. Let's see. Santosh Kalshetty thinks in the future robots will be replaced by Alexa. I can imagine a combination of the two. If you look at something like Astro, you haven't gotten your hands on an Astro yet, have you, Andy?
No.
Man, I really want one. But no, I have not gotten my hands on. I've seen one, but I haven't been able to play with one myself yet.
I haven't seen one either.
Oh no?
Nice. No, not in person.
We'll have to stop into Travis's house of awesome and see if we can play with one there.
Definitely.
So for those of you guys that don't know, in Seattle, in one of our office buildings, we have most of an entire floor, maybe half of an entire floor, that is a built-out smart home. It has a kitchen, it has a bathroom, it has a garage, it has all of this stuff, and all of it has smart home devices for everything. And our teammate Travis is responsible for that space, and so anytime there's any kind of new device, he's instantly got one in his hands, and he's trying to figure out what the best way. He had the Echo Show 15 months before I ever got to see one in person.
Nice.
He already had it mounted and hanging on the wall in there, so it was pretty awesome. Okay, maybe we'll have to have Travis on here from time to time. I think he'd have an interesting perspective on some of this too. Robert Kolak says, does Amazon host a MySQL database that Alexa could access? I currently use one through hostmysite.com. So this is a tricky question. AWS does offer MySQL, so you could connect to a MySQL database that lives on AWS pretty easily. But if I don't know hostmysite.com, but I have to imagine if you have a MySQL database there, that Alexa could use the same connection string information that you are using already in your code to be able to talk to that same MySQL database. There's no limitations to what Alexa can and can't connect to. Basically, once you've gotten to your code behind, whether that's Python or Java or JavaScript or C# or whatever, you have the full ability to do everything that code can do. And so if you want to make a call out to a database and get some information and bring it back and compile that into speech, the only real restriction is that I think you have to be able to make a full round trip call from the time the user speaks until the time that they get a response back. I think it's like 7 seconds, and 7 seconds is an eternity.
Yeah. For a skill.
I built a mobile app a long time ago, and I wanted to let the user know that something was happening just by using vibration on the phone. And so just as a test, I put in 3 seconds of vibration. Just to I thought that would be a reasonable amount of time to make their phone vibrate. And as I was playing with it, I realized 3 seconds is so long that your phone can start to vibrate. You can feel it. You can reach into your phone. You can pull your phone out of your pocket and still say, why is it still vibrating? Like it's that long. 3 seconds is an eternity. And so 7 seconds is a really, really long time. But Robert, you should be able to connect to your MySQL database that you already have. You don't necessarily have to use an Amazon one. But if you are looking to use an Amazon one, there are, I think, a couple of different MySQL solutions on AWS.
Might be a good question for Slack, because I guess one of my questions I have about this is, in the question, it seems like there's a problem in there, is because, right. Why would you need Amazon to host a MySQL database that Alexa could access? Is there a problem with your current solution?
Sure.
Is it not performing the way you expect it to? I don't know.
I think some people, especially when you see Alexa hosted, some people think like you have to live within the AWS ecosystem in order to do all of your stuff. And so I really like to break those apart and really remind people that like the code that lives behind your skill, the database you use, those are entirely up to you. Use what you're comfortable with. You don't have to live in AWS world, and it's not even necessarily easier. It might be more convenient from like a billing perspective or something like that, but technically the Alexa developer console and AWS are completely separate entities. They don't have anything to do with each other, except it probably runs on AWS. But beyond that, there's no reliance or need to live in that world. You're going to be communicating with a MySQL database on AWS the same way that you would be communicating with an MySQL database on the website you're already using.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so Alan was helping Dana with context around the saved utterances feature. Yep. Don says, is there a good tutorial for tips or techniques about the Alexa Developer Console's skill test environment? I feel like Cake Time, I can probably take user voice down. I feel like Cake Time does a decent job of this. I do believe that it has the ability to, it talks to you about the testing tools, because there's 2 sets of testing tools really baked into the developer console. And I can quit here. I'll share my screen actually, and we'll, because I think this is a valuable thing for everybody to know. So if you don't know this, hopefully you'll learn a little something today. So there we are in Infinity. And then I'm going to come over to this. Okay, so this is my slot machine, but that's not really very important. But you can see that I have my testing tool here. You can see I've got my my page. If I can scroll with like the input and the output, all that stuff is here. So you have this testing tool, right? This is sending messages against your code's backend. You have manual JSON. If you don't want to write the commands, but you just have some of these samples, you can copy these right out of here and use these as the thing that you want to send in here, right? So you can paste JSON basically into this box. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but if you have specific JSON representations, rather than typing in a bunch of commands to get to the place you want to be, you can just do that here. There's the voice and tone tool. If you guys don't know this is just a way for you to hear anything that you want Alexa to say. Andy Haldeman is dreamy. And you can hit play.
Andy Haldeman is dreamy.
Right, and you can hear how Alexa would pronounce those things. So I wasn't sure how she was going to do his last name. But if you...
Did a good job.
Yeah, it was actually very good. If I'd say Jeff Blankenberg is not, we can...
Jeff Blankenberg is not.
She's gotten much better with my last name, but there was a while where she used to say Blankenberg. And that seems to be have been corrected. But the other tool that I want to make sure people are aware of as we talk about testing is actually in the build tab. And if you guys haven't used this a lot, I think this is highly, highly valuable. So if I go to my interaction model, you'll see up here we have this evaluate model. These are really testing tools. And for those of you that are familiar with unit testing in software development, this should look very familiar. But I have a couple of options here. One is I can say bet 5 coins. This is not testing my back end at all. All it is doing is telling me what would happen in my interaction model if I said that thing. And so you can see here that wager intent is the intent that I hit, and it recognizes that the slot is 5. I was also thinking this might be a helpful thing for our friend that was struggling with numbers, Miguel. I feel like this might be an easier way for you to understand exactly what's happening inside your interaction model without having to go through the whole process of testing against your code. So this allows you to see things like that. Then you take this a step further, you go to NLU evaluation. This allows me to come in and build out entire sets of tests. And so if I look at, let me go to my annotation sets. I think I've already built some of these. Go away. And we take, I have this slots things here. So this is a test. I said bet 5 on wild cherry. And what I expect to have happen is that you're going to hit the wager intent. You're going to tell me which machine the user wants to use. You're going to tell me what their wager was. It was 5. And so as I run this test, it's going to tell me whether or not that passes or fails. What's really useful about this is that you can go through and build this whole annotation set to say, this is what I expect my users to say, and here's the outcomes that I expect. And then you can go, like we do with unit testing, implement the code that's necessary in my interaction model to make all of those things true. And you can run this thing over and over and over, and until it passes, you've got work to do. So it's a really nice way, especially if you have people that understand voice but maybe don't know how to build an interaction model or don't know how to work with these tools. They could at least give you a set of utterances and what the expected outcomes are, and you could put those in here as tests and kind of go from there. So that is my my quick little story on testing tools. But if you guys haven't seen all of those, I think they're really useful for a number of different purposes. There's one more that I didn't show, which is the ASR testing, and that's where you can actually create audio recordings of utterances and use those to run tests against your skill, because sometimes the way someone says something in an accent or if any kind of speech difficulty they have, you can record those and see how your skill responds to those kinds of responses as well. Anyway, that was a lot, but
it's very cool.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so Miguel actually meant the word vernacular, which makes more sense to me now. Not tabernacular, which I'm not sure is a word. But as we think, so if I say vernacular, now it sounds to me like he's suggesting that there are times where American speaking, like here's an example. I just did a search for American vernacular numbers on Google, and I got for the number 120. Andy, how would you say that number?
120.
Yeah, that is actually the British vernacular of that number.
There you go.
The American vernacular would be 120.
Huh.
Which is
know.
But in either case, if you're working with numbers, you should have a number slot so that you don't have to manage the words at all. And instead, you just get the digits. That is far more useful, and it works across a number of different slots. There's the number, there's the 4-digit number. There's also things like the Amazon.date field, which when someone says, make an appointment for next Tuesday, you can set that as the Amazon.date slot. It'll take that value, and what you get in your code is actually the date of next Tuesday. rather than you having to do all that crazy date math, it actually does all the conversions for you on the fly. So there's a lot of those kinds of benefits that are built into some of those slots that people may not be aware of. But again, Miguel, the thing I don't yet understand about your specific problem is what are you trying to do with that number? Because it feels like you should have an Amazon.number slot sitting there catching those values so that you don't have to worry about what words it's hearing or interpreting. Treyla says he has used some third-party services for emotion analysis. That's very cool. Okay, Jawworks got a good one, and I thought I saw the correct answer to this on Slack, Jawwork, which is why I did not respond to it. But I'll say what I thought I saw on Slack. So I'll read your question first, and then we can get into it. Your skill is ignoring slot values that you have that asks for a letter and repeats it. So his letter slot has the values A, B, C, all the way down to Z. And when he runs the skill, only one of the answers is correct, the letter A. All others are almost right, but for you, I get YOU, which is understandable. But for X, he'll get 10 or by, and for V, he gets 5. I've tried other values for X, like EKS and EK, but they don't work. What slot value or phoneme can I use for X, U, and V? So my first question for you here is, what do your slot values actually look like? Because you say you have the letters, like you have quotation marks, A, quotation marks, then B, quotation marks on either side, and all the way down. When you're talking about individual letters, like the letters in the word FBI, what is generally recommended, and I think this is the appropriate syntax, is that you would type F period, B period, I period. And that will recognize that as being these three words, not anything else, not Phoebe or something like that. It lets it know that you are specifically talking about individual letters and not something that is to be pronounced, I guess. So in your slot values, I'm curious, are you using your slot value should be A period, B period, C period, D period, all the way down. If you don't have those periods, then you probably will get these kind of unpredictable things where someone said you and you get the word you or something like that. I thought I had saw that on Slack, seen that on Slack, but I'd love to know if you've given that a try, because I feel like that is the appropriate way to do that. There was a time I got scolded by our science team. I was building out a bunch of slot values, and I capitalized all the slot values. So it didn't matter what the word was, right? But it was all caps. I don't know why I got into the habit, but I just started doing it. And they said, oh, that will interpret it like FBI. Like, that's another way that I've seen that done. So I don't think you should try both. I wouldn't do capitalization and periods. I think periods is the right way to go. But if periods don't work, you might also try capitalizing the letters and see if that makes a difference. But those are the two things that I would want to try before I moved on beyond this. And I also feel like this is such a common question we get, where people want to receive just a letter as input. And I don't know why we don't just offer a built-in slot for this, because it seems like it's a problem that should be solved for everyone. But if we nail this down, and I can go play with this after we're done with these office hours, I feel like I want to write something down that just says, nope, this is the way we do it. Because I feel like I've hypothesized a lot about how I think it should work, but I should actually test that for myself and see what actually does work. Another little bit of trivia, Andy, just because I like to keep you in the conversation.
I was just reading the comments, actually. I was just thinking ahead, but go ahead.
Do you know the difference between an acronym and something called an initialism?
I've never heard initialism as a word before.
I hadn't either. FBI is technically an initialism because you pronounce the letters. NASA, scuba, things like that, those are acronyms because they are pronounced.
Wow.
So if you refer to NASA as NASA, that's an initialism. But they are actually distinctly different things, depending on whether or not you pronounce the letters that make up the thing. And Alexa has some mechanisms built in to try to understand, are you talking about an initialism or are you talking about an acronym, and what's the right way to handle this? Because I think if you say NASA, when it tries to match a slot, it will match it against N period A period S period A period, even though you said NASA. So there is weirdness in that. Anyway, a little technical lesson for you today.
I love it. Yeah, now I know. Learned my new thing for today.
All right, we only have a couple minutes left. Habuma has created a video that shows how to run locally with Ask Run. It doesn't go into debugging so much, but it does show you how to run locally, and he provides a link. So this is on Twitch. If you guys go find the comments for this video on Twitch, you can find the URL to that. It's on YouTube. The relevant bit starts at 1629. I've been thinking that I need to create a new video that focuses on local running and debugging. He's adding that to his to-do list. Awesome. Thank you, Habuma.
Yeah, a lot of people helping each other out today. I love it.
Yeah. Steve Nelson also talks about how he's used some external APIs to do emotion and sentiment detection. And he's got a page for that on his website, snforward.com. You can also pass your data through the Lex service, and Lex will give you sentiment analysis on the speech that you provide. Habuma says that the local debugger.js file that comes in the Hello World template is out of date. It's deprecated, and he even says so in the file. He wishes it would just go away so that other things like Ask Run would just work by default. Agreed. That's a good tip. I'm going to mark that down. We'll get that solved. Urban Blaster wants to know if Astro is named after the dog on the Jetsons. I mean, the dog was named Astro, but wasn't Astro a real dog with like one of those glass helmets? And that Rosie was the robot in their house.
Yeah.
I don't think their dog was a robot, but it could be a Jetsons reference for sure. You're certainly old enough to remember the Jetsons, right, Andy?
Oh yeah. Dating myself? No. Yeah.
I'm an ancient 46, so I'm very familiar with the.
There you go.
The username Old and Sad on YouTube says, "Is there a way to update live skill slot values via the CLI?" Well, Old and Sad, there's a couple of ways to modify your skill slot values. There are something called catalogs, which you basically build an API endpoint that has a list of data, and you can tell your skill to subscribe to that catalog, and it'll use those as your slot values. You can, if you have a skill that's been certified already, and all you want to do is change some slot values and push it through certification again, they actually have a rapid path for that. As long as you're not making other changes to your interaction model, and all you're doing is adding some slot values, you'll get through certification really fast, usually without any issue. And then the third thing I would talk about is if you're updating live skill slot values, you also have something called dynamic entities at your disposal. And this allows you to modify the list of slot values on the fly as your skill is running at runtime. So I use this for a trivia game that I built where my slot by default just has a couple of throwaway values. But the moment I ask you a question, my code live updates that slot to have only the right answer. There's only one value in that slot, and it's the right answer. And if Alexa says you matched that, if you resolve to that entity, then I know you got the question right. And if you didn't match what I have as my one slot value, then you got the question wrong. And I use that as a way for me to tell you that you got the question wrong. So there are lots and lots of ways to update your live slot values. Ooh. Sorry, everybody. So that is lots and lots of options depending on how and when you want to do it. But if you're just trying to update your static list in production, you can just go through certification. It'll be very fast and painless. All right, I think we're almost out of time. And I've used almost my entire battery during this broadcast. That's amazing.
Wow.
Robert says his MySQL question is because his 30th skill, he's built 30 skill, or this is his 30th skill, will be used by my community, and I want to give them other options. Perfect. Well, MySQL will certainly solve that for you. Joelwork still hates that the testing personalization dropdown or attention box ad is taking up all the screen. Agreed. I hate it. Sorry that it won't go away. Habuma says the best way to lose hours of your life is to open the voice and tone simulator in one browser tab and the SSL SpeechCons documentation in another. Agreed. That's actually why I built a skill a while back called Dev Tips, where you could just ask it to play one of the speech cons. You just say, hey, like, say Bazinga, and it would say the speech con for you automatically, so that you didn't have to like copy and paste all of them in there. But I agree with you. You can lose a lot of time between that and the sound effects. There's lots and lots. Hey, are there any tutorials, walkthroughs for app-to-app linking now that it's being mandated for some of the certification programs? I am sure that there is technical documentation. I don't know about a tutorial or walkthrough, but as part of what I'm doing for this casino, I will make a point of trying to write something that will do that for us.
That'd be good. I've been working with, I saw Syed's question in our smart home channel on Slack about this.
Cool.
I think it's definitely for smart home, it's something that we should be taking a look at.
Awesome. Trey last, this seems like it's going to be funny. There's a theory that the Jetsons and the Flintstones are set in the same post-apocalyptic time period. The Jetsons are never on the ground, and the Flintstones are recreating text from pre-apocalyptic past. That's pretty funny. So Miguel is trying to solve the problem of like a Porsche 911, where you don't actually want the number, you just want the entity. That's interesting. I'm going to play with that too. Let me see if I can come up with something that'll work for that. I'm not sure exactly how that will work, but it seems like that should be workable. Because like there's the 955 and there's a couple of other Porsche number models. And it seems like you should be able to do that pretty easily. Sorry, I don't know how loud that is, but it's very loud for me. And that is the end of the questions and the end of our time. Andy, this has been fantastic.
It's just flown by.
So thank you guys all for being here. I'm going to play with some letters, some initialisms. I'm going to play with some Porsche 911 slot values. We'll see what we can come up with. And then, of course, I'll be working on some app account linking. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you for putting up with my crazy loud 20th story pool patio here in Austin, Texas. So I'm going to go back to my air-conditioned room. It's getting hot out here now. And I will see you guys all next week. Andy, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, everyone. Great questions.
Bye-bye.